Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Charisse Walker. She's an author, coach, entrepreneur, real estate enthusiast, and podcast host. Welcome to the show, Charisse.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Right, Charisse. So, these are many things: author, coach, entrepreneur, real estate, and being a podcast host. But there was once a time when you were living on food stamps.
There was.
Help us understand about that journey. That is a lot of inspiration for anyone, and the road to financial freedom towards having no mortgage and living this life. Help us understand through your journey. Tell us a bit about your journey so that through your journey is the message here.
Yeah.
Help us understand that message.
No, I appreciate that. So I actually used to be a college director. I started teaching college at 22, and then I just became the dean, and then I became the director of the college. So I was kind of like a principal. At the time, I went through a divorce when I was opening a college, and then I met my husband. We ended up getting married, and like a couple of years after I was divorced. And I'd always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so because of that, I ended up having a baby. And so I chose to stay home. Well, my husband's income was not enough. And at the time also, I should say, the reason I stayed home was I had two special needs kids. It was becoming too difficult for me to work and try to take care of them and raise them. So it wasn't like only by choice. It was also out of necessity. So we were on food stamps, couldn't do it. And about that same time, a family member came to me and said, "Hey, why don't you invest in this great family activity and opportunity?" And so it did not turn out to be a great investment. So we ended up, and then I had a very close friend of mine also came to me and said, "Hey, let's invest." And so those two things, friends and family, just don't do it. And so those two got me into an incredible financial hole. And so that's how we got into real estate. And we started investing in real estate and fixing and flipping homes. And then we did some buy and holds, which some people might not understand what that means. I can explain later. But because of that, we were able to start to build like we worked hard, but we built our financial I don't want to say empire, but it's to the point now that we don't have a mortgage. I mean, we have a mortgage, but our rentals cover that mortgage.
Right, Cherry. So help us understand, during those difficult times, people just look at the security part of it and just don't move out of that.
Yeah.
In terms they are just there wherever they are.
Yeah.
What is the mindset? What was your mental mindset, the mindset that you had, which led you path towards financial freedom? A lot of people are not able to look at that part. In fact, people who are earning also, they do not have financial freedom. And from the point that you started, it's a bigger leap than generally a lot of people would need to take. So help us understand your mindset at that point in time, and how did you motivate yourself from there on?
So I think that for me, mindset was a huge thing because I felt horrible. Here I had at the time I had 5 kids, and my husband, we had just been married. And so here, like, it's my family that did this and my friend that did this. And so I felt incredible guilt, and I just felt like I got to do something to get myself out of it. So my why was I have to be able to provide for my family, and I have to make it right with my husband. And so the first thing, you have to have a why. You have to have a why, because if you don't, I could have just like sat down, curled up in a ball and just cried. What are we going to do? Right. And then you have to make a plan, and you have to start seeing, there's a book, the Who, Not How. And so I had been, for myself, like studying real estate for about 1.5 years, just self-teaching myself. And so then it was, okay, now I just need to stop learning and just start doing. So I left a meeting. It was a real estate investor association meeting. And I drove to, I looked it up because I was a realtor, and I drove to this house and I made an offer. They accepted it. And I'm like, oh, now what? And so you just have to do. You have to stop the analysis paralysis that people talk about. It can happen so much, and then you never do anything. And so your why, belief in yourself that I can do it no matter what, and then like just act, just do something, and start asking people questions after.
Right, right, Charisse. So let's come to the why part.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that you need money?
Right.
But is that the real why? How do I know what my why should be? Especially, when things are not so good.
Mm-hmm.
That time your mindset is totally different.
Yeah.
How do you sit down to thinking about big things?
Yeah.
Rather than just surviving. So that's why I asked,
Yeah.
how do I decide my why at that point in time, or should we leave it to the future? Okay, let's look at that point. And does this keep on changing?
Yeah. So it was interesting because my kids, I had 2 in high school, and then I had a brand new baby, right? And so I think she was a year old at the time that it all just went south. And so I'm looking at my kids, and I'm like, how, and what type of example do I want to leave to them, and what kind of a legacy, and what do I want to teach them? So I really didn't want them to think, oh, I'm a victim, and look at what all these people did to us. It was, I have control of my life, and I'm not going to let anybody take that control away from me. And so for me, like, I'm really stubborn. And you have to change your mindset, where I'm writing a book called Flipping the Iceberg from Trauma to Triumph. And so you really do have to, like, everything is a learning experience. And how can you learn from that? And what can you do to become a victor, not a victim?
Right, Charisse. Now, again, why real estate?
Yeah.
Why not something else?
Yeah.
I want to understand. There must be other options. Why did you zero down on the real estate part itself? I want to understand that for the audience.
Well, think about it. I know my parents bought a house for $30,000 in the 1970s, and that same house is now selling for $550,000 to $600,000. So real estate always goes up. So it's appreciation is what we talk about, and it's tied to something. Like my husband, when he got divorced, and we actually had this conversation last night. He's like, I hate 401ks. I've lost all of them. When I went through my divorce. And then when in 2008, when the market crashed, and then when I left, type thing. And so the stock market, some people make a lot of money in that, but you have to understand what you're doing, and you have to trust other people. For me, real estate, I can trust myself. And it's tied to an asset that nobody can take away as long as I am making the payments or I paid it off. Whereas a stock, it's subject to a whole bunch of other people. And so for me, it was the control, and that it's tied to something that it's constantly appreciating. Sure, prices have gone down a little this year, but they're going to go back up. And so if you can have some type of asset that, like this piece of, I don't know, this calculator, it's not ever going to go anywhere. And so you have something.
Right. What about financial knowledge of the numbers, knowledge of these financial terms? Because when you go into the market, there are people who are already controlling that market,
right?
Know much more, and suddenly from somewhere somebody comes and wants to enter the market, so they also get a bit intimidated. They start watching. How do you look at yourself when you do not have the same amount of knowledge, or are competing with such people who are already there in the market with very, very entrenched into the same either local market or the larger market, and especially if it's a women who is entering into such a field, that sort of. So I want to understand, in terms of, do you feel intimidated? Do you let them intimidate you? Not them, but as the situation in a wider sense.
That is a great question. And I'm glad that you actually brought that up, because in the proprietary industry that I was in, it's a very male-dominated industry. So here I was, this little 30-year-old, not anymore, I wish I was, but this 30-year-old female that was a lot skinnier back then. And I'm walking into these guys who are 60 years old that have been in the industry for years, decades. And I remember I interviewed with somebody, like to open up this college. And he's like, well, he had this really thick accent. I won't say where. He's like, I don't think you have what it takes to run a multi-million-dollar school. And so that offended me because I'm stubborn. And I said, I leaned into him and I said, well, then why did this school? And I just like threw all these experiences at him. And so I think for me, like, fortunately, I had studied for a year and a half and had been doing all this stuff before this horrible thing happened to us, right? So I had some knowledge. If I were to do it again, I would say, like, YouTube is full of information. Google is full of information. You can learn everything. But if you want to fast track, you need to get yourself a coach. That's something where it's worth paying somebody who's been there before, that has made the mistakes that they have, and maybe share part of the profit with them, because maybe you can't afford it at the time. It's called rev share. So, and that's something, you know, that I offer. But my goal is to get people out of that, get people unstuck. And so if I can help them with that, then it's totally worth it. It's just like a basketball coach or a football coach. Everybody has a coach. For like these professional teams, they've been playing since they're 5 years old, but your coach sees something in you. They see something that you might not see. And so they can help you with that. And I still have coaches to this day.
Right. Now, let me ask you something. You use the word stubborn twice for yourself. I would look at it more as resilient.
Yes.
Someone who is persevering.
Yeah.
But if you believe that, okay, you want to stick to something if you have decided.
Yeah.
And that's the way you are, or that's the way you perceive that you are.
Right.
In business, you need to change a lot of things, as you go along.
Right.
How did you do that? How did you bring that part of your personality of making that change against the same sort of a personality which you said that stubborn? That's why I use the word resilient and being perseverant, with full of perseverance.
Okay, so
how does that?
It's totally funny because I just did a podcast myself on my podcast, and the title of it was Resilience. And so you're being positive. And so that's a good thing. That's something else that I would recommend, that you turn a negative into a positive. So I appreciate you calling me on the carpet on that one, because it is resilience. And I think it started when I was very, very lucky. I graduated at 21 from college, and at 22, I got my job into the professional track. And I was approached by the dean and said, hey, have you ever thought of teaching college? And I said, well, I've wanted to be a teacher, like a high school teacher. So yeah. And he goes, okay, well, we don't have anybody. So here's the book, and you teach in 2 hours. Oh, and by the way, it's a 4-hour class. Okay. Yeah. And so for me, I think it started there. Because I remember, it's all guys. It was all guys. And again, I was this 22-year-old girl that just graduated from college, had no life experience. And so I remember, the door was closed, and I went to go open the door, and I said, okay, Charisse, you have two choices. You can either walk in and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I just got the book. I don't know anything about any of this stuff. Or I can walk in, act like I know exactly what I'm talking about, because I had a degree in the topic, So I'd spent 4 years studying it, and just fake it till I make it. And so for me, it was obviously I chose the latter, because you should never walk in and go, oh, I'm so nervous, or, oh, I'm so this. Don't ever admit your weakness, because that's what people hear and that's what people see. So just don't. I can't stand when a speaker gets up and says that. Oh, I'm so nervous. I have never spoken in front of this many people. Why? Why do you need to say that? So for me, it really did start at a 22-year-old, and being up with a whole bunch of men, I had to prove that this little teeny bopper, which I wasn't, but I had something valuable to teach. And I ended up becoming the instructor of the year at a school that I taught the general education, and it wasn't like a proprietary education, meaning it was vocational school. So you just have to believe in yourself, and you have to, you do have something to offer. You are valuable.
Absolutely, you are valuable. In terms of now financial freedom, how do you define what your financial freedom should look like for you? Because for many, even millions and even billions may not be enough. For some, even a bit of lesser amount is more, and more than for several lifetimes. So how
Yeah.
do you define your financial freedom and do not come out greedy and you get into that rat race, which is going nowhere?
Yeah, so I think my husband brings me down a lot. Like, and when I mean like down to reality, right? Because for him, he grew up in this small town and like money just did not matter to them. And he has this family that I just think is ideal. Like they all have this fantastic relationship with each other. They talk to each other every day, like through text message. They just have an incredible relationship, and money doesn't mean anything to them. And so, like for them, happiness is like my husband being on the lake fishing every day if he could, right? For me, it's like, whoa, I want to be on the stage talking to people, impacting lives. And so, like, you have to define what is important to you and what you value. So, and in my book, I was talking about how you have to decide, like, because if you're going to go for all that money, you have to give up, like, you have to sacrifice something else. And so, if that's family, you have to decide if that's what's important. For me, I have 6 kids. So, yeah, I could own a lot more real estate, and we are. This year is changing, but we're doing a different method, and so it doesn't take so much time away anymore. And so because of that, like, I can pay my mortgage, I can pay my bills, and I have money left over every single month. So to me, that's good. I have money in the bank, and so that's where, yeah. Am I on a path to do something else? Absolutely. But if that's going to take away from me being able to be a mom, which was why I quit my job to begin with, right now there's a season in my life, and the season is making sure my kids grow up and they're productive members of society. Once they
Right.
graduate, that'll change for me.
Right. So the idea is to have enough money in the bank on which you can bank on
Yeah.
for whatever things that you want to do.
And
Great.
go on vacations and do things, the things that we want to do. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Go for fishing and do not try to become a land shark.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Right. Good. That's good. Now there is much to learn, understand from you, Charisse, and I'm sure there is a lot to understand from your book as well as from your podcast. So tell us about those.
All right. So my podcast is called Unbreakable Mompreneurs. So it just talks about, what you're talking about. My goal with that is I was a single mom and it was hard. I had 4 kids at that time. And so I want to help people overcome their mindset and be able to pursue their dreams and realize that you really can do whatever you want. Like I am shocked that I make more money now than I was when I was working 70 hours a week. And so it's like I'm still working that much, but I'm home, right? And so that's what Unbreakable Mompreneurs is about. And guys can be there too, but trying to empower moms to realize you can be a mom and you can have your dreams come true. It is possible because I've done it. So that's the first part. And then the second is my unbreaking, like they're related, but they're not. It's flipping the iceberg from trauma to triumph. And I've been through divorce. And in the United States, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Actually, it's a little more than that. And nowadays there's a trend where people, like the younger generation, they're not even marrying. They're just living together, cohabitating. So I'm heartbroken because I feel like the family is being sacrificed because of that. And so my goal is that you first of all deal with your trauma, deal with your stuff first, overcome that stuff so that you can be in a healthy mindset to be able to make a good decision. And the reason I say that is I was at the wedding altar and I heard a voice in my head say, Charisse, get up and run. And I went, nobody was around. And I knew it was the wrong decision, but I didn't know how to stop it. I'm like, well, I'm already here. My parents have made and spent all this money and I can't stop now, not realizing because I was 19 at the time that that's a commitment that's like forever. It just didn't register. And so my goal is to get people to be healthy first and make sure. And then the second part of the book is now that you're healthy, now you need to look at that person and you need to flip the iceberg because an iceberg 10% is above water, 90% is below it. So you flip it. The goal is to see the 90% and have those tough conversations that when you're in love and Twitter pated, oh, life is wonderful. No, think about all the things. Are you married?
Yes.
Okay. So the things that you thought were wonderful, now you can't stand sometimes, or vice versa, and so it's, can you live with those things, and are you on the same page? And so it's a story of things I've learned, things I've seen, things I've witnessed with all the people I've worked with throughout the years. And so that's the goal of the book.
Wonderful, wonderful. There is much to learn from you, understand from you. So a lot of people who would want to learn more about you, from you, what is the best way for them to connect with you, Charisse?
So the best way would be, there's a few different ways. So unbreakablemompreneurs.com, and that can kind of take you to the 3 different things where we talk about the podcast. You can be a guest on the podcast. And then you have Fly Free Retiree if you want to get into real estate and start learning what you can do with real estate. I teach 7 different ways, and I'm currently learning an 8th, right? This year, it's going to be amazing. But that one's coming out. So if you want to just learn, and if you don't have any money, that's okay, because I can teach you how that doesn't matter. And so that's flyfreeretiree.com, and then just CharisseWalker.com if you want to just, and flippingtheiceberg.com if you want to. The book will be coming out in the next couple months, so you can get on my wait list.
Absolutely, absolutely. Flip the iceberg. Do not be a Titanic, be a Titan. And
Exactly.
you'll be able to.
Oh, I like that. I might have to write that down. I'll reference you.
It is recorded. It is live.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks for your great wisdom. Thanks for all the inspiration to everyone and trying to make this difference in the world. With this, it's a wrap on this very special episode of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.